Finland. It was a long time since I visited Finland in business the first time. I worked at a game studio that worked with Nokia and their Engage platform once upon a time. Does anyone remember that? Known as the elephant ear phone. But obviously that was a long time ago. So now I work at Resolution Games, which is a VR studio based in Stockholm. And so far we have released 3 titles. One of them is Wonderblade, which is one of the highest rated games on Daydream. It's a collection of minigames that utilizes the Daydream controller in several innovative ways. We also have a fishing game called Bait, which we think is one of the most popular games on any VR platform there is. It has been downloaded 2 million times. And the Solitaire Jester, which was a very early release for the Gear VR. In fact, it was released before the Gear VR was released. Go figure. It was a small project to get something out there, so we aimed at delivering something small, but with quality still. And we also made lots and lots and lots of prototypes. Of those, lots of things haven't become anything except knowledge in our heads. You'd learn a lot from making prototypes and trying ideas out. For our company, we have the goals that the games should be accessible. It should be easy for anyone to just put on the headset and start playing and enjoy themselves while doing that. So when we started this company in 2015, VR was just starting to become a viable games platform. And many of the devices that we actually developed for today were launched approximately back then. But there are lots of things happening in the VR space today as well. It's pretty interesting currently. If we go back a bit, the device that kicked off the whole VR revolution was the Oculus Rift, which is, oh, this doesn't work. Ah, there you go. This was supposed to be the games. Sorry. Okay, the Oculus Rift, which was basically the first popular headset out there. And that is a high-end headset. It requires a powerful computer to run. It requires these thick cables and a dedicated space where you set it up and put up these cameras that serve as base stations for the head tracking. And although it has gotten less expensive, it's still not very affordable. And also the Vive is a similar device. It has similar properties to the Rift. On the other side, we have the mobile headsets. And they're very easy to get started with. And they're very affordable. But they are not as powerful. The experience of those is not as immersive as these high-end headsets. One reason is that they only can track the rotation of the user's head and not the position of the head. So it doesn't have positional tracking. None of these devices have that yet. And we as a company decided early on to focus on mobile VR. Because we believe that accessibility is more important than power. But now there are actually coming new devices that aren't as easy to place in one of these categories. We have these two, for example. The bottom one there is one thing that Google is working on, which is a standalone Daydream headset. And that uses inside-out tracking, which means that there are cameras mounted on the actual device that track the surrounding instead of the other way around, like the Rift does. With this, you get 6 degrees of freedom. That is, you can track both the rotation and the position of the user's head, which provides much more immersive feeling. And these are completely wireless as well, and don't need any additional sensors at all. So they take no space in your living room. And there's also on the top there Microsoft's headsets called the Windows MR. And those are tethered just like the Vive and the Rift, but they're more mobile. First of all, because you can connect them to any laptop almost, any reasonably good laptop from the last few years you can connect it to. So you don't need an extremely powerful computer to run this. And they also have inside-out tracking, so you don't have to set up any cameras or sensors or base stations in your room, so you don't have to move furniture around. And the price for these will be lower than the Rift and the Vive. So our focus as a company has been to develop on platforms that are accessible. That is why we chose the mobile platforms. But these ones, this new middle category is pretty interesting for us as well. And all of this, it's still the first generation of VR devices. But I'd say they're pretty good. So the problem currently is that if the content on these devices is not good enough, then people won't buy them anyway and won't continue using them if they buy them. So we at Resolution Games have taken on this challenge of developing games that users want to play and come back to. And, well, that's definitely a challenge. I'm going to talk about some of the things that we discovered while developing our games and all our prototypes. And hopefully that will help both us and you guys to develop games that will sell these platforms. The first thing we noticed was that a VR game doesn't have to have a spectacular setting. It doesn't have to be aliens and spaceships and explosions and action all around. Because VR is more like the real world than a video game. And VR is also more like the real world than, say, a movie, for example. So what do people enjoy in the real world? That is the question. And we realized that people enjoy relaxing. A relaxing experience is pretty nice in the real world, which means that it's nice in VR too. So you can put the user in a cozy environment like this, like old library room with a fire and sit there and play cards, or like a tropical lake, fishing. And this goes, of course, well with our ambition to create games that are accessible for the general public. We don't want to scare them away with like aliens or horror or scary explosions. We prototype a lot to test our new ideas. Sometimes we prototype for a specific game project, some specific gameplay in a specific game, and sometimes we do hackathons for the whole company and just work on different things and come up with strange ideas to try them out. So we have made dozens of prototypes. And as I said, they normally don't turn into games, but we learn a lot from them. But with VR, it's a new medium, so it's not obvious from where to pull your inspiration for games. If you compare to mobile games, when mobile games were new, many people tried to basically implement console or PC type of gameplay on a mobile device. It took a while before mobile became games that utilized the actual platform. And so they found their own style. And many of them copied ideas from web-based games, Flash games, for example, instead of console or PC games. So what is the similarity for VR? What should we as VR developers look at when trying to get inspiration for new games? Should we look at mobile games or console games or board games or something completely different? As VR is a new medium, we can think outside the box here. Or we can try old concepts again, because VR enables you to do things that weren't possible on earlier platforms. For example, one thing is navigation in a three-dimensional space. Because if your head is position tracked, that opens up quite a lot of new opportunities. For example, this one. This is an old 80s game. It's a 3D version of Tetris. And on a 2D screen, a game like this will be pretty hard to play because it's hard to see what's going on. The blocks will be in the way of each other, blocking, so you can't see what's going on. And if there is a way in this kind of games, if there is a way to move the camera, it's often pretty cumbersome to do that. But with head tracking, you can actually make a game like this and just move around to see what's going on. And also you have this stereoscopic view that makes it easier to see what is happening. So head-tracked headsets open up new possibilities, actually, for gameplay that just didn't quite work on a 2D screen. We haven't done this ourselves. It's just an idea, free to take for anyone. I'm sure there are lots of people here who can come up with good ideas that just weren't possible to do without VR. One thing that's pretty difficult in VR is user interfaces. There is no 2D screen anymore. You can't have a heads-up display like this. You can't put things in the corner of the screen like this. If you put things in the corner of the screen in a VR headset, it will be like in the corner of your eye. It will be, and also because of the optics in the headset, it will be a bit blurry, difficult to see, and also it will move around with your head when you turn, and that doesn't feel good. It feels a bit weird. So you can't attach UI elements to the screen itself. Instead, we have to position the UI in the world. Here's an example of that, and this is obviously not our game because there is a gun in it, and we don't do guns. But it shows that you can display some stats, in this case the amount of ammo, in a diegetic way, where diegetic means that it's part of the game world. And we have used that quite a lot. This is from our mini-game Hamster Hoops. And this features two diegetic displays. Can you see them? It's these two. Both of them display a score, the number of points you get for scoring, and the total score and the time. For sports games, it's of course pretty grateful to use diegetic displays because the displays that show scores are like normal in sports in the real world. But there are some limitations to diegetic displays. Here's an example from a game we call Tindertown. It's a mini-game where you shoot with a fire hose on objects to get points. So we wanted to give the user feedback about the number of points they scored. So when you hit the target, a wooden board would pop up like this, like on the left display. You score 50 points, there's a wooden board popping up that says 50. The problem we noticed when we user tested it is that if there is a board in the game world with a number on it, people will shoot it because they think you get that number of points for shooting that. So we actually replaced this diegetic score display with the one on the right, which shows the score as a magic floating number, traditional arcade game style. And as this is an old convention in video games, people understood that better. Now, we have to talk about this most notorious problem in VR, which is locomotion, how you move around. If you move the camera, people tend to get sick. And the reason is that if your eyes see that you're moving, but your body doesn't feel that you're moving, the body reacts actually as if you have gotten poisoned, so you feel sick. And in most of our games, we solve this by just not moving the camera at all. And this, of course, limits the kind of gameplay that you can do, design. So it's pretty limiting. And also that as objects move further away, and the resolution of the devices, of these devices is often pretty low. They get pretty pixelated once they move further away. So you have to limit the play area to a pretty small area in front of you. We were playing around with a racing game, and we couldn't put the camera in the car, of course, because you would definitely get sick. But we made a small remote control car, but we had to limit the play area. So in the end, we made this solution. We changed the cars into balls instead that would roll on a tilting surface, like an old labyrinth game. And that also felt more natural with a border around the play area. So this is an example of iterating on an idea. The first idea didn't work out very well, so we changed it into something different. There's also this other solution to the locomotion problem. Sorry, did I miss that last? This is the way the game looks. Sorry. That is teleportation. So instead of moving the camera smoothly, you just teleport it instantly to another location. This can work pretty well. It's pretty popular in VR games, but it depends on the setting of the game, whether this is actually realistic or not. We use this in our mini-golf game, where it's very natural to teleport, because you hit the ball moves away, the ball stops, then we fade out the screen, move the camera to the new position of the ball and fade in. Actually, Daniel at Survive is going to talk more about locomotion and teleportation in his talk at after 12 sometime. So we're looking forward to see that. So let's wrap up with some tips, and these pretty much speak for themselves. If not, you have the chance to ask me questions right now. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Martin. And as he says, are there any questions? If you've got a question, if you just raise your hand and we'll get a mic over to you. So don't be shy. Oh, yep, we've got first one there and then at the front.
Hello, Bryn Lee from Curve Digital and Kuju. I was wondering about bait and why you think it's been so popular as an experience. Fishing games have existed for a long time, but what is it about your version of sort of fishing in VR that's worked so well?
I think it's a lot because of accessibility, that people realize what a fishing game is. Anyone knows what fishing is, and if they see a game that is about fishing, they get this idea what it will be like. And especially if they enjoy fishing, they will really much like to play it. And as we want to make games that are not only for the typical gamers, it's also a good setting to have something very familiar. So I think that's the reason.
Jan from Black Cell Games. I was wondering, you decided to go for the mobile market for the obviously greater user numbers. How does it look in terms of revenue? Because that's obviously something that all the VR developers share, the problem of either you have a small platform like the HTC or the Oculus where you get higher numbers, or in terms of higher revenue per user, or you get the mobile platform. So how do you see the price development on mobile, which famously is a free-to-play space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we think that VR games will turn out the way that mobile games went with free-to-play content. Currently, the market is too small to actually make much money from that. So we are not making that much money, I can admit. I won't go into specific numbers. But we're still learning. The idea behind the company is that we are learning this before, when the market arrives in a few years, that we'll be ready. We'll be like the main player in this space. We'll make money then instead.